In this video, I'm going to show you how to get customers so fast it'll scare your competitors. And no, this isn't some random meta hack or SEO BS or asking you to commit tax fraud. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is share with you a concept called speed to revenue that will help you make 2 to 3 times more money with the same amount of ad spend. We're also going to cover the 3 areas where businesses hemorrhage money and how to stop it. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into a 5-step playbook that you can implement to fill your sales calendar with qualified leads. So long story short, I want to help you get more customers, make more money, and grow your business faster than everyone else. So let's dive in. Okay, a couple things I want to cover on why this is very important of the things that I'm going to go through. So most business owners think that they need more leads in order to grow their business. That is true to some extent, but majority of businesses usually have a leaky bucket. So let me explain. Back in 2017, I started my first official business, which was a personal training studio. It was probably one of the wildest rides that I've ever had. I had $5,000 to my name. I made that because I was working at Apple at the time. I did a launch at a buddy's gym, made a little bit of money to use that to open my own gym. And then I found a warehouse where the lease was about $2,000 a month. I had to pay first month and I had to pay a deposit, which was $4,000. So I was left with $1,000. And that was the only $1,000 that I had to build this entire business. So I used that $1,000 to run ads. I made sales. I made money. And then I used that money to buy equipment to get the gym going. It was the craziest thing and the most riskiest thing and the dumbest thing I've ever done. But when you're young, dumb, and ignorant and have wild amounts of belief in yourself and you have nothing to lose, you're like, might as well just go take it. Now, luckily, I was able to make $100,000 cash collected in about 8 weeks. Now, the reason I was able to do that was simply because I was calling all of my leads within 5 minutes of them opting in. So it wasn't the fact that I needed more leads. I just worked my leads harder than everybody else. And in that 3-year span, I grew that 1 location to 5 locations in 3 years, simply because I had better sales systems, better processes. We were just very sales heavy focused and service focused and retention focused. So I was able to outgrow my customers significantly. Now, the way that I used to do that, in a very simple way, this was back before CRMs and stuff, I was using ClickFunnels and a Google Sheet and Zapier. That's all I had. So people would opt in with their phone number and their email. That would go into a Google Sheet. And then Zapier would send me a zap on my cell phone with their name and their email and their phone number. And I would just hit their phone number right then and there, and I would just shoot them a call. This could be at 9 p.m. at night. It could be 6 a.m. in the morning. As soon as a lead opted in, I was calling within 5 minutes. And when I was in sales calls, I had a buddy of mine who I employed at the time who all he did was just call leads as soon as they come in and made appointments. That was it. And that was the main and single reason that I was able to do so much cash and survive and actually get it off the ground, simply because I didn't have a lead problem. I worked my leads harder than everybody else. To drive this point home and why I'm bringing this up, in 2024, there was a research study that was done where a company filled out 1,000 online forms for about 1,000 businesses, right? So 1,000 forms. 635 businesses never responded. So 6 out of 10 never even responded to their leads. That's why, I will tell you this one statement over and over again in this video, which is going to be never, especially with AI now, never been so easy to win at business simply because you are willing to do the goddamn boring work. And you can test this for yourself. Call up a local business, right? Call up your own business and see how fast people get back to you, right? Now, one thing that I do want to add is that business is, yes, you need to have a better offer. Yes, you need to have better funnels and marketing and stuff like that. Yes, right? That's kind of the core of it. It's not just always about novelty. I think most people try to get an edge in business because of novelty. The people that I know that are building portfolios and holdcos and different things of that sort, they just buy an exceptionally good business that provides service and they just tack on marketing that's boring and consistent, because that's how you win, and that's where the edge actually comes in inside a business. Because 60% of businesses are not doing the boring work. If you can imagine, 6 out of 10 businesses, 60% never responded to their leads. So if you can be part of the 40%, it's unreasonable for you not to be able to grow your business, right? So when you fix this problem, what I'm about to share with you and how you're gonna fix it, you're gonna make 3 times more money with the same amount of marketing spend. So when you're in a 30-mile radius, you have a specific amount of market share. You want to be able to gobble up as much market share as humanly possible. So that way you can have these leads because you've already paid for them. How do you now re-engage them, which I'll talk about later down the line. You'll get better reviews and referrals, and you'll turn into what I call the 10,000 pound gorilla, right? The massive behemoth in your freaking market simply because you're willing to do the boring work. Okay, now moving on. What are we going to cover inside of this video? We're going to cover a couple things. Number one, what is speed to revenue? I'm going to educate you on what the speed to revenue is. That way you can understand all the metrics. There's going to be 7 metrics that we go into, but one of the most important ones is going to be what we call lead to deal ratio. And it's the metric that nobody measures. Okay. I'm going to help you diagnose the 3 leaks that are inside of your current acquisition system, that you're hemorrhaging money. And then we're going to go into a 5-step playbook to fix the 3 leaks that you have inside of this process. Now, why should you listen to me? So by focusing on this, earlier, you remember my story, I grew my first business from $0 to $100,000 cash collected in the bank in 8 weeks, okay? And then on top of that, I was able to build 4 companies. I sold one, where I've been responsible for executing these systems, okay? So personal training, which was Elevate Personal Training, grew from 0 to 2.4 million a year in a span of 3 years, okay? Online Fit Pro went from 0 to $1 million a year with 80% margins. That was my consulting business. We had Remote Wellness Institute, which was a certification company, went from 0 to $150,000 a month in 3 months, less than 3 months. And then currently I'm building boring sales, so I'll report back what happens with that. Now, who is this for? If you want to be able to make more money and beat your competition, it's for you. If you're spending money on ads and you want to be able to get a better return on your investment from ads, if you're advanced and you're focusing on everything else except for the boring stuff because you're like, oh my God, I just need more killer offers, when in reality, you just need to call your leads, right? If you're considering hiring an appointment setter, or you just did, this is going to help you really implement the systems in place to make sure that you're using and utilizing the most out of those people. Or you can sign up for boring sales, shameless plug, so you don't need a setter. Or if you're not at a position to hire a setter, then that's where boring sales actually comes in and we shine. If you have an appointment setting team already and they're not performing, this will help you help them perform. Who this is not for, we're not going to go into offer creation or getting your ads up and running. This is not for people that don't have existing lead flow. So if you're just starting out in business and you need to be able to create an offer and get lead flow going, this is not for you. This is for people who existingly have lead flow already. All right. Now, next section we're going to go into is understanding the concept of speed to revenue. We're going to cover 3 things. We're going to cover what is speed to revenue. We're going to cover why speed to revenue is important. And we're going to cover the 7 parts of speed to revenue. So let's dive into what speed to revenue is. Most people, if you're watching this, you understand the concept of speed to lead, right? Speed to lead is defined as the time that it takes for a business to make contact with their leads. So a lead comes in and you're able to reach out to them. Now, before there were automations and CRMs and workflows and all this good stuff, this was a manual effort. And the businesses that won were because they were on top of their leads that were coming in ASAP, right? But with automation, speed to lead is become more of what they call an artificial number. Every person that has a CRM, that has a ringless voicemail, etc. Some people don't, but if you do, you already have speed to lead. Now it's become something what I call it's just watered down because everybody's doing it. Speed to lead is not something that would give you a competitive edge because now there's a lot of automations that come into place. And the reality is because everybody's doing it, the prospect has evolved. It's kind of like back in the savannah. I talk about back in the savannah almost every video. So I may have to reference a lot of history for the things that I do. But back in the savannah days, right, when we were hunter and gatherers, our prey adapted to what we did. So if our concept here is our prospects are prey, if our prospect are prey, they're going to adapt to the signals that we give them. And the signals that we're giving them is generic emails and text messages. That's why the reply rates have been going down. Earlier, when you had automations and people were executing on them, we would get great results. Now you don't because the prospect has learned, because when your text message says stop to unsubscribe, ain't nobody gonna respond back because they know it's an automation, right? So the companies that are really focusing on speed to lead are no longer looking at automations. They have those going as like a safety net, but what they're really looking at is how fast does my team or myself call the leads that are coming in. So speed to lead has become a metric of calling, not of SMS or email, right? So why is speed to revenue a better, more accurate measurement? Because speed to lead doesn't mean anything if you don't close deals. Speed to lead is I just contacted this lead. Well, what happens all the way up until that contact to the sale? Speed to revenue tracks everything in between. So speed to revenue measures the outcome between lead opting in and being closed by a sales rep or going to checkout or whatever it may be. You can apply this in e-com, but this is specifically for high ticket service, online based businesses, right? Because the funnel metrics on the process is very synchronous and very easy. There's metrics that go into it. E-com has a lot of moving parts. So speed to revenue is measuring everything between lead opting in and it closing. And there's 7 metrics that go into speed to revenue, which is going to be speed to lead, right? Which is one metric that fits within speed to revenue. There is a lead to contact percentage. There's a booking percentage. There's show up rate, which is a percentage. There's closing percentage. There's re-engagement percentage or rate. And then there's lead to deal ratio, which is the most important that most people don't measure, which I'll talk about. Okay. We're going to go into each one of these in the 7 parts and what they mean and how you can diagnose them and all that good stuff. Now, why is speed to revenue so important? In order for you to understand speed to revenue, you have to understand what I call prospect behavior modeling. The easiest way I like to describe this is in copywriting. If you've ever studied copywriting, when I first got into business, I studied copywriting, which was learning and writing editorials from Gary Halbert, Dan Kennedy, Michael Masterson, Eugene Schwartz, like reading all the really good books. And the rule in copywriting is to step into the shoes of the buyer or the person that you're writing for. So what that means is you have to understand the pain, the desire, the worldview, so you can think and write specifically for them. Now, when it comes to revenue architecture or go-to-market like engines is what you build, because what I'm talking about is called revenue architecture. Most companies and most businesses don't really think about that golden rule of focusing on the customer, focusing on the prospect or the prey. What they focus on is what's convenient for the business. When you're thinking about the business and you're not thinking about the prospect, well, you're not going to get the outcomes that you're looking for. So in order for you to improve your speed to revenue, we need to look at the prospect behavior modeling, which is what happens on the prospect side of things. How are they perceiving everything that's going on from our marketing all the way to the sales process, right? And so when I'm designing a go-to-market motion or architecting revenue architecture, I am thinking about the prospect, the ICP, the ideal customer profile, and understanding their behavior and their motivations to then design it accordingly. So when it comes to inbound marketing, we're going to map out the prospect behavior model, and there's going to be really 4 steps that go into it. So step number 1 is going to be seeing your offer, then they become a lead, and then they take the next action, and then going quiet and why you're able to re-engage that prospect. So let's talk about step number 1, which is seeing your offer. Now, this can apply to both outbound and inbound. So inbound marketing, let's define terms, make sure we're on the same page. This is where a lead is coming to you. So from ads, SEO, AEO, somebody opting in or raising their hand and saying, I'm interested what you have to offer. Outbound marketing is where you're reaching out to cold people who don't know you, meaning that there was no intent from them opting in. So it's you reaching out and creating that intent with a really good offer. Now, in order for you to stand out in the marketplace, you need a superior offer. Everyone talks about offers. A big buff man on the internet with a beard wrote a book about it. And I've always struggled to operationalize what a really good offer is. And so I wanted to define it myself. So an offer is a trade that you're proposing, meaning you can clearly define what they get, what it costs them, who carries the risk if it doesn't work. So in short, an offer is something that you can say yes or no to. You can present it to somebody and they can say, yes, I want this, or no, I don't. And there's 3 layers to an offer. There's an outcome, there's a cost, and then there is risk. Right? And I can create a entire in-depth training on how we create offers because that's what we do for our customers. We're very selective with who we do that for. But if you have a really good business and a really good service, creating an offer becomes very easy. So that is step 1 of the prospect behavior model where the person sees your offer. Next, we're going to go into is becoming a lead. Once the person has identified that the offer is going to help them solve a problem or get a desire that they want to achieve, people only do 2 things. People are either running away from pain or going towards desire. And we want to be able to utilize that in our marketing. The next thing is they become a lead. Now, what is a lead? A lead is defined as a potential customer who has shown interest in a company's product or service and provided contact details such as email, phone number, or name. In a local market or service business, phone and email are usually the best. Name and phone number is even better than email, right? Now, what I love about this definition of a lead is that somebody that has shown interest. So good. I even wrote so good. Now, most of us think that interest is binary. What does that mean? Things are either binary. Binary is like yes or no, black or white. But interest is actually something that exists on a spectrum. It's not whether you're interested or not, it's how interested are. Finding somebody attractive is on a spectrum. It's not whether the person's attractive or not, it's how attractive are they. Now, the human brain does not like to think in a spectrum, it likes to think in binaries. So things could be, did this work or did this not work? No, it's at what extent did it work? Now, for those that are in relationships, you'll know that interest that you have in your significant other varies over time. And the same thing happens with a lead. It's not whether the prospect is interested or not, it's how interested are they? And especially as time goes on, are they still interested? So when someone opts in, their interest is at an all-time high. They saw the offer, they were in that state, they are like, this resonates with me. They're on their phone, they're thinking about the problem or desire. They gave you permission for you to engage them. And that is what I call the hot window. They are the hottest in that window because they're thinking about, you have their attention, right? They're interested. So Robert Cialdini calls this the privileged moment from his book Persuasion. It's whatever has a person's attention in that moment of decision, that's who's going to win. So, and the instant after a form is filled or they fill out a contact information, you have their attention if you reach out, if you utilize their attention. Now, what most people do is they just rely on email and SMS, but that doesn't get somebody's attention. That's step number 2, which is step number 1 was they see your offer, then they become a lead. Step number 3 is taking the next action. All right. So most businesses that I see, they treat this step like the prospect is now waiting on them. But that's not the reality. The prospect is shopping. They're shopping and they're also distracted by everything else that's going on inside of life. They got TikTok notifications. You got next door notifications of somebody posting a picture of the guy walking shirtless and complaining about him. There's a lot of stuff going on. And if you want to have a funny laugh, you got to download the next door app. I'm not sponsored by them, but it is funny, my friend. So what actually happens if the next action is not taken? Most people will be filling out 1 or 2 or 3 forms, depending on the need or the desire that they have. If we're creating an offer where we are creating that desire, they're probably not looking around. But if they're researching for a plumber or for somebody to fix their AC or for somebody to do their grout, they're looking at multiple different people. And they're going to be able to pick the business that gets to them the fastest, the one that is able to give them all of the information that they need, because that's really what it is. They became a lead because they wanted further information to then take the next action step. Now, the fastest and most available, those are 2 separate things, because that's where businesses lose both, like smaller businesses, because they don't have the availability and they don't have the manpower to reach out the fastest. Hence why we're building Boring Sales. Shameless plug. If you don't have the manpower, that's what we do for you, right? Now, interest, like I said, is on a spectrum, and it plays in your favor or it doesn't play in your favor. So what that means is that peak interest has a shelf life. An interest window for someone when they opt in, it doesn't like close slowly, very quickly. It can literally close within like minutes, because somebody could opt in for something and then their kid pulls them away and now they completely forgot about what they opted in for. Like the best example is if you're running meta ads, somebody opts in and you call in like a couple of hours, which should not be happening. You should call much faster when their interest is there. But let's say you call them a couple of hours, they're like, I don't even remember what I opted in for. Or the people that opt in the middle of the night, they're like, I don't know what I opted in for. What we want to do, and what ends up happening, is that they take another call, or 20 minutes later, they don't even remember clicking on the ad. So here's the thing that I want you guys to really pick up on. They never decided against you. Like, they're not like, nobody sat there comparing you to somebody else. They just went with the person that was the fastest and that was the most available, that gave them the information that they need to make that decision and to move over to the next step. Now, there's a study done called the Lead Response Management Study, where they studied 15,000 leads and 100,000 call attempts. And so what they realized was calls at 5 minutes versus 30 minutes. So if you call a prospect within 5 minutes, you have a 100x contact rate, meaning you have 100 times more likely that you're going to be able to contact that person, qualify them, and book them in. Not 100% more, 100 times more. So if you're not calling within 5 minutes, you're at a serious disadvantage. And that gap is 25 minutes. That 25-minute window, somebody can make a decision with somebody else and move on, right? So it's not about like the person who's working harder. It's simply just being faster and doing the more of the boring work. And the reason for this is because buyers now and prospects and expect things very quickly. I mean, you look at Amazon Prime. So 82% of consumers, this was a HubSpot research study. So 82% of consumers say that they want an immediate response. And 60% of them define immediate as 10 minutes or less. Crazy. I mean, for me, I want Amazon Prime. And if the thing's not getting here in the same day or the next day, I'm probably not going to order. I'm going to go with the option, even if it's more expensive, if it gets to me faster, right? So speed and expediency is something that we are naturally being pushed towards. So as a business, you want to be able to think about, okay, how can I decrease the time to value for a customer to start getting them results? Now, that was number 3, which was taking the next action step. Now, step number 4 is going quiet, and why and how to re-engage people. So this is part of, again, the prospect behavior modeling. So we covered number 1, which is they see your offer, they become a lead, they take the next action step, or they don't, or they go quiet, where you never hear from them or you're unable to contact them. So here's what happens. Majority of leads will go silent. That's just the reality. Why? Because you either didn't catch them when you had their attention, and now they've lost their attention and now they're too busy. It doesn't mean a lack of interest, it just means a lack of attention. That's why I'm using the word attention very, very specifically. So let's define the two, okay? Interest and attention are two different things. Interest is whether they want the problem or desire, okay? That's interest. They opted in. They have the interest. Attention is whether they're thinking about the problem right now. See the difference? So it's not whether they have interest, it's whether you have their attention. And most people go silent is because their attention isn't about the problem. The interest is there, but the attention is not. So it never goes away. The attention is just somewhere else because they have a meeting that ran long, or a kid is sick, or they got a quote that scared them, or their car broke down. There's always something. That's why it's so important to understand the behavior of our prospect. And that's why I'm going into this and going super deep, because tactically I want you to be able to understand, because if you understand like just this concept alone, you're going to be able to architect the way your acquisition process works that makes you way more money and you outgrow your competitors, because simply of the fact that you're understanding who your prospect is. And so this allows us to adjust our lead process. Once you understand this, you can understand to adjust the setup of your lead generation and your sales process to increase the amount of speed to revenue. Okay, so that was step 4. Now we're going to move on to the 7 parts of the speed to revenue, or 7 metrics that go into speed to revenue. So we're going to talk about speed to lead. We're going to talk about lead contact percentage. We're going to talk about booking rate. We're going to talk about show up rate. We're going to talk about closing rate. We're going to talk about re-engage rate. And then we're going to talk about lead to deal ratio. Okay, so we're going to be talking about 7 metrics that go into this. Yes, this is super deep, but the more you understand, and this is what I was telling the buddy, can you throw all this into AI and have AI do it for you? Potentially. But AI is very good at knowledge. It has a lot of knowledge. It has all the knowledge in its fingertips. However, what it does not have is wisdom, right? Wisdom is discernment. So when my business partner, Steve, it has AI write a sales script, he has to go in there and make a lot of tweaks and adjustments. When I write ad copy or creative or put offers together using AI, I have to go in and review things and have that human layer, right? When you're developing with AI, if you're vibe coding, well, dude, nobody reviews their vibe code, but a senior developer would go in and review the differentials to make sure that it's done correctly. So AI right now is very powerful with knowledge, but not with wisdom, because it doesn't have the capacity to understand from situations. And so what I'm giving to you right now is the wisdom that you can learn these things. So when you have AI implement this, it does it correctly, so you know it's doing the right job, rather than fiddling with your thumbs and not knowing if it's doing a good job or not. All right, moving on. So the first part of the 7 parts that go into speed to revenue is speed to lead. Let's define that. The definition of speed to lead is the total time and speed that it takes for a company to respond to a new inbound prospect. Okay, so the total time and the total speed that it takes for you to respond to a new prospect. So if you could recall in step 4, based on the HubSpot study, 82% of consumers want an immediate response. They define immediate as less than 10 minutes. And based on the response study, 5 minutes versus 30 minutes is 100x contact rate. So if you look at this specifically, the word is calling. It's not automated text or emails. They help, but they're not going to be the make or break. We can structure them in a way where they sound more human and we get people to respond. So that's really how we design our SMS and email flows, where it feels human. It's short, it's to the point, it's broken up. So we get people to respond. And as soon as people are responding, we still call them, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to call the prospect, because that's the chance that we have to speak with them to move the deal along much faster, which will impact speed to revenue. That's why speed to lead is the first metric in speed to revenue. So automations can make every business look fast without it actually being useful, because you can be fast, but you're probably not making the money that you want to make, because we're not doing the boring work, which is calling the leads. So we measure this by looking at your CRM and then seeing when the lead opted in and when you or your SDRs or your setter teams called them, to be able to engage with them, and how many times they called them within that day, which we'll talk about frequency, which is next. So the next thing in the 7 is going to be lead to contact percentage. So let's define that. The definition of lead to contact percentage is the amount of leads that opted in divided by the number that got contacted by the business. So you've got 100 leads, you've contacted 50 of them. That's a 50% lead to contact percentage, meaning, and so contact percentage is a meaningful conversations that you've had, usually anywhere between 5 minutes or more. If somebody's like, hey, give me a call back, we usually don't count that as a meaningful conversation. And so what we're measuring is the efficiency. How many attempts were made to reach the lead? Because it's not only about how fast we reach them, it's about how many times we reach them. And the reason for that is there was a study done by Velocify where they tracked 3.5 million leads. And that's like, one thing I want to say is like, I am so happy and so excited that I'm building boring sales. Yes, it's a shameless plug, but like, I'm so excited because the more customers we get, because we're built like a software, the more customers we get, the more data that we have. And the more data that we have, the more research that we'll be able to conduct on what gets leads to respond, what the opening messages should be, how do you convert more leads into customers? Like, we're going to have so much data, and I have never in my life have been as excited as I am about building boring sales. I've never built a business as awesome as this, and like having the ability to build SaaS now with everything that we have at our fingertips, it's absolutely incredible. I digress. But what I was trying to say is that they tracked 3.5 million leads, and they found that 93% of the leads that converted were reached by the 6th call attempt. 6th call attempt. What that means is that there's also another study done by Conversica. They found that 70% of businesses quit after 2 or less attempts. In order for you to have the ability to reach a lead, a 90% ability to contact them happens at the 6th attempt, but most people quit at 2. Isn't that crazy? So if I do the math here, what is 2 divided by 6? 33%. So 70% of people don't even contact their dang leads. That's insane. Or they don't contact them as often. I want you to sit with that for a second, because most people don't even reach out after 2 attempts. Like, I look at this number and I just think to myself, it's never been easier to win in business. And most people don't even try. And that's the difference between the businesses that just get to $600 to $1 million a year to the ones that actually get to 10 million, right? Very easy. And so the biggest reason why the companies struggle is because it's hard, right? Contacting your leads over and over again requires effort. And then you hire a sales or a SDR team, and they're humans, and they don't want to do it because, yes, you don't want to do it, so you expect another person to do it too. It's very rare. That's why we're building boring sales, and makes everything easy, because AI doesn't have feelings, and it doesn't need a sandwich, and it doesn't need to get over a breakup. It just does the thing that it needs to do. And if you're wondering, well, can AI make phone calls? Well, go check out our website, boringsales.ai, and look at the demos. It is pretty crazy. We ran a test where we let AI loose. AI called Judy from Neptune Society, okay? And it told people that it was an AI within the first 10 seconds of the call. And it called 800 old leads. It double dialed everybody. It connected with them. And the conversations that we had when we listened to them, people were like, are you a real person? It was that crazy. And it actually booked meetings. And that was old leads. I can share more research with you, but really ultimately the bottom line of this is that call your leads faster and call your leads more often. So that's metric number 2, which is lead to contact percentage. All right. Now, moving on to the third metric, which is booking percentage. The definition of that is the amount of leads that were contacted that turned into a scheduled appointment. And this metric has a lot of facets to it. And so the biggest one is the words that we're using to communicate with people to get them to book. Right? Is there urgency? Are we enticing them to want to book or take the next action step? So in my experience of building businesses and consulting with thousands of businesses, is that they don't have a process in place that is consistent, or they have a process in place and it's not actually being followed. And so for some businesses, this is having an SDR or a setter team, which is a pain in the butt to manage. And the reason for that is you're going to have to deal with human inconsistency. So that's the metric there, which is booking percentage. How many of those leads are booking an appointment or taking the next action step? The fourth is show up rate. So the fourth metric that impacts speed to revenue is show up percentage. So the definition of that is the number of people that showed up to the scheduled appointment. So in sales, this is the metric that, especially in service and online high ticket sales, this is the metric that a lot of people measure. They're like, oh, this has got to be this benchmark. And there's a lot of levers that you can pull to improve this, right? So there's confirmation text messages, emails, calls, double bookings, decreasing the time to bookings. And it's funny, I want to be able to talk about this real quick, which is as an enterprise seller, it not only works when you're doing inbound where you're booking people in within the first 3 days, it also works when you're doing enterprise sales. And so what most people do is enterprise sales is so long because both parties just book the next week after, or 10 days or 2 weeks, or someone's traveling or something like that. And when I was doing enterprise sales, what I usually like to tell my prospects at the end of the meeting is like, hey, is later today too early? And everyone's going to say yes. But what it does is instead of thinking about next week, people started talking about end of day. And so if it was like a Wednesday, I was able to book a meeting like Friday or early Monday because I was condensing the time down. And that allowed me to cut my enterprise sales cycle almost like 50% of my peers, because I was just pushing deals and being more aggressive to get them across the finish line, because all I did was just shrink down the time a little bit more, right? So that was metric number 4. We are going to now go into metric number 5, which is closing percentage. And the definition of closing percentage, real straightforward, is the amount of leads that were booked that turned into paid customers. Simple, right? And this number is more of an ego number because every industry is different. It's affected by your offer price, your salesmanship, the needs of the prospect, etc. Like we had an 80% close rate on a $21 offer for 21 days. Right, that's just a lot of ego, but we had a 40% close rate on $6,000 to $8,000 packages when people came into the studio, right? Completely different. And so it varies on your industry and deal size. Just because you have an awesome closing percentage and you're selling something for $2,000 doesn't make you God. Okay, so pipe down. Number 6, re-engage to booking or closing percentage. So this is the amount of leads that went cold. So that's how we're defining it. We define it as the amount of leads that went cold, that you could not contact, that you lost, that became inactive, and we got them back on the calendar, or we got them to be able to close. And this is honestly one of the single most drivers of success for me in business, because I treat every lead as quality, because somebody has given me interest. I just need to capture them at the right time of attention. And so in my personal training business, the reason I was very successful is in my studios is I would just text blast people with an intro offer every quarter, right? And when I had my consulting business, I would send like 9-word emails or monthly webinars or free lead magnets. I would also give value over and over. We'd make YouTube videos, so I would send all those out, right? We do that with our list right now. And so I remember like I signed up a prospect after 8 months of them opting in, simply because I kept sharing material every 21 days. And he was like, dude, you're the person that's shared the most amount of value with me over time, and I wanted to buy from you. And he probably never consumed anything, but the fact that he's gotten a lot of value and we stayed in front of them is the reason why I was able to make the sale. And so just keep that in mind, because not only is it time, it's attempts, but it's attempts also long term, because business is a game of endurance. And if you can just endure and be consistent and do the boring work, it's unreasonable why you can't win. Another great example of this is my wife, who's the top seller at Neptune Society. We built a 2-year SMS automation for her. So a lead would come in and she just plugs it in. It does a 7-day multi-touch follow-up with voicemail, all that stuff. And then after that, it goes into a 2-year automated SMS where she's still calling. It gives a task for her to call and stuff like that. But a lot of it is heavy SMS. And we have people that are replying back to us after 16 months. And we're not just sending like canned SMS, like we're sending pictures of like our dog Winston. And it's like funny stuff. And it's like human and getting people to laugh and making jokes. And like actually like we'll send like a knock knock joke to people and people will respond back. And we use that to be able to re-engage the conversation because the SMS is there to be human and it's there to be able to get a response back. We send memes and people respond to memes left and right. And it's absolutely insane. So some of the best salespeople that I know and the people that I've studied, 50% of their production comes from long-term follow-up, right? Now, that was number 6. We're going to go into number 7, which is lead to deal ratio. This is the most important metric that you are going to measure within speed to revenue. Okay. So the definition of lead to deal ratio is out of 100 leads, how many became paying customers? So for most businesses, it's usually about 3 to 5 out of 100. Right? So it's like 3 to 5%. Now the businesses that I know that are really doubling down on the boring work, they're able to get that up to 20 to 25%, even 30% because of their speed to lead and their ability to contact at multiple attempts, right? So same ad spend, just 3 times more deals, 5 times more deals. It does help that if you have a very good offer, but to be honest, you can have a very crappy offer and just have like really good tenacity with you and your team and still outperform everybody. And so why is this number the number? Every business owner knows their cost per lead, right? You probably know that. You go into Meta and you're like, oh, this is my cost per lead. But no business owner, including myself, I didn't know this. How long does a lead sit before a human talks to it? Nobody knows that, right? And that second number decides whether you're losing money on ads or you're not. Because yes, your cost per acquisition is good and your cost per book call is good. And you're like, oh, it doesn't matter because it's deeper funnel metrics. But at the end of the day, the deeper funnel metrics are affected by the top of funnel metrics. And if you can fix the top of funnel metrics, which is your speed to lead and your lead to deal ratio, it's going to improve everything, right? And so the only number that catches all of the 6 metrics is the lead to deal ratio, which is it catches speed, it catches attempts, it catches your closing percentage, and it all shows up in one metric. And so if you can consolidate those 6 that I shared with you into one, but you need to track those 6. I'm not saying not to track those 6, but if you had to, like for me, the 3 metrics that we review is LTV, cost to acquire customer, and then the third one is our lead to deal ratio. That's it. Because our lead to deal ratio, obviously for us, it tracks how good our product is doing. Our cost to acquire customer obviously allows us to outspend our competitors on marketing. And then the third is LTV because we want to be able to build a behemoth of a business. Getting to 100 million is going to happen because we're going to retain majority of our customers and keep our churn extremely low. If you can take anything out of this training, go calculate this number. Out of the last 100 leads, how many of them turned into deals? And focus on improving that metric by it's like knobs, right? The rest of the 6 metrics are like knobs that you can turn up or down. And so whatever knob needs turning, if you just focus on one knob, which is just speed to lead, if you just did that, I guarantee you this number will improve, right? And then slowly, incrementally, you turn the knobs on all the other metrics as well. Big takeaway, I've been spewing at you. I've been spitting bars, or as I like to call it, spitting bars. And maybe none of this is valuable. And if it's not, totally okay. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. But fixing any of these can and will make a massive impact in your business. Guaranteed. Like I'll pay you. That's how confident I am, right? Because most people obsess over show up rate and closing percentage, which is great. But even if you added, like, especially if you have like a business that's humming and it's going really well every business, like there's always fires that you're putting out. Always fucking fires. But even a 5 to 10% lift in any of these knobs that you can turn up is going to make a massive, significant impact downstream. You're going to lower your cost per acquired customer. You're going to lower your cost per book call. You're going to have a better show up rate. And so if business is a game of inches, and if we can just do these boring things to acquire those inches, it's unreasonable that you can't win. And so there's a couple ways that you can do it. Is you could do it yourself, which requires a lot of time and attention, and you also then have to service and do all the other things, or you can build a big old sales team to try to do it, or you can use boring sales. Choice is yours. Just kidding. Okay, so we covered the 7 metrics that go into speed to revenue. So we covered speed to lead all the way down to lead to deal ratio. The next thing we're going to go into is diagnosing the speed to revenue leaks. So diagnosing the speed to revenue leaks, we're going to cover 3 leaks that happen in the acquisition system that impact speed to revenue. And all of these leaks can be attributed to one of the 7 metrics. So we're going to focus on leak number 1, which is speed to lead. We're going to focus then on leak number 2, which is consistency plus touch points. And then we're going to focus on leak number 3, which is persistence and reactivation. Now, what I want you to do is, as I walked through them and as I explained them, I want you to be able to rate yourself from a scale of 1 to 5. Now, a big thing I do want to cover, the root cause behind majority of these leaks is not an effort problem, it's an avoidance problem. Especially if you have a sales team. I'm like speaking directly to people that have a setter team or a setter team that's underperforming. You or myself that have had a setter team in the past, it's an avoidance problem. Calling leads is boring, it's repetitive, it's the most under-rewarding task ever, right? Unless you have a sales rep who is groomed, like I came from the personal training world where I had to go out and get my own leads. Then I had my book of business where I wrote my phone numbers and I had to make $200 a day. So that was naturally ingrained in me. So when I came into high ticket sales and I started doing $200 a day, I got incredible results. But most people that come into high ticket sales don't have that expectation. They want leads given to them and sales calls on their calendar because they're this like really good high ticket closer, but in reality, they're not really that good. And so if they're not coming from this expectation of dialing and picking up the phone, most human beings avoid it, right? It is the work that no one likes to do. And so you hire other people to do it, but they don't want to do it either. And so what ends up happening is that they don't do a good job. They don't call the leads exactly as you want them to. Then you have to manage them. Then it's more of a headache. And now you're mad at your setter or your SDR team for not being motivated to do the thing that you weren't motivated to do. A lot of these problems are just human problems. There's no such thing as business problems. It's just personal problems manifested in a business. So a lot of it is just avoidance. That's why we're building boring sales, because AI doesn't have avoidance. It just does the work. All right, moving on to leak number 1, which is speed to lead. So let me start with some metrics. In 2024, Revenue Hero secretly shopped 1,000 businesses. 63.5% of them never responded at all. Never responded, okay? And the average response rate was 29 hours, right? It was like a way more than a day later. And the only 17% responded within 2 minutes. 17%. So out of 1,000 businesses, only 17 of them responded within 2 minutes. Well, guess who are some banger businesses? Those 17, because they were making it happen. Drift did a similar study with 433 companies. 55% of them never responded, right? And only 7 responded within 5 minutes. Crazy. So the average between the two studies is 12%. That means only 12% of companies respond within 5 minutes of a customer contacting. Imagine that, right? This is why it's never been easier. It's never been easier to win at business because most people don't want to do the boring work. Stick around and I'll give you everything that you need to fix on this. So super easy. Okay. Leak number 2, consistency and touch points. Okay. Consistency comes from having a process, and most businesses, I'm not saying you lack a repeatable process. It's usually in the founder's head and their team is just winging it. Because if you look at, like, James Clear has a very good quote on this. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. If you don't have systems in place or processes, then it's just not going to happen. So what this means in our context is creating a process beforehand, before human emotions, before you are tired, before things go awry. Because when the plan is created beforehand, execution in the moment becomes easy. It's crazy because, so a great example of this is when I build outbound motions, right? I'll go into a company and I see SDRs. I like to observe for the first week or two of what is the current process, and I like to map everything out. And what I see usually is that SDRs are making their list the morning of. They're figuring out what to say, what email are they going to send. Half of the day goes by and they only work one account. And it's like, dude, you could have done all of that. And that's why I like to do when I go into a company, build an outbound motion, I like to create a playbook. I take the cognitive load out of thinking, right? I take the cognitive load out of it. Everything is done. Their list is pre-made. They know the messaging. They know the offer. They know what to say. All they got to show up every single day is just execute, right? And a great quote for this, a great quote is by Eisenhower. He says, in preparing for battle, I have found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Right? Bill Walsh from the 49ers, the day he would have every contingency plan written out so that when the game day actually came and the roar of the crowd or if it was cold outside or he wasn't able to think, he had everything mapped out and everything be able to make so in that moment, he didn't have to take a lot of cognitive load and he can make decisions very quickly. He created the systems and then let the systems carry him forward. So the consistency and lack of touch points happen because there are no systems, because we don't know what we're going to say in message 1, message 2, message 3, message 4, or when we call, it's not the same script every time. Because if we can dial in that consistency, that's going to make a massive difference. Right, moving on to leak number 3, which is persistence and reactivation. 68% of companies give up after 2 or few contact attempts. 68%, so almost 70%. So there's 30% of companies that are calling their leads multiple times. And within that 30%, I wonder how many of them are actually getting to that 6th attempt. 93% of converted leads were reached by the 6th attempt. So listen, calling your leads is hard. That's why adding more setters is not going to solve the problem. You can convert more people by calling them a few more times. Hence why, like, we have condensed the 6 attempts down. Like, we like to do it in 2 to 3 days. So it's like sprints. Day 1 is like 3 dials. Day 2 is like 2 dials. Day 3 is another 2 dials. So yeah, we take the 6th attempt, but we're going to probably do like close to 12 attempts because the goal is to condense that time down. And if you make it where you're calling within hot windows and different things of that sort, it doesn't feel like you're spamming the person. It feels like you're trying to reach them because remember, they showed interest and you have to make sure that you maintain their attention because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. The next part of this is also going after people that you talked to and that didn't buy. A reactivation is a very big part of it because like having a very good follow-up system and long-term follow-up is going to make a massive difference in the sales process. So in my last sales role, I used to have 5 to 6 deals a month that would come from long-term follow-up of me just sharing value. And I shared with you earlier where I had a prospect sign up after 8 months of me consistently sharing value with them. Now let's go into the 5 steps to fix the 3 leaks. There's going to be 5 steps that we're going to cover. But step number 1 is going to be getting your baseline. Step number 2 is engineering your first touch. Step number 3 is creating a repeatable process and system. Step number 4 is pre-built cadences. And step number 5 is metrics and KPI. Take these with a grain of salt. Even if you can implement 1 out of the 5, that's going to be huge. It's going to make a massive difference. Again, I say this in almost every video that I create. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't implement, there's no point. None of this is going to make sense until you actually implement. And if you're going to implement, pick 1 or 2 things and just go deep and then implement them, understand them, get to know them, become a master at them, and then come back and implement the other because business is a game of inches. So let's go into getting your baseline. So in order to know where it is that you want to go, you need to know where you are. And what that means is that you need a lay of the land. And this is why getting a baseline is crucial. And there's a statement that I will die by, which is use data to regulate your emotions. Business is hard. And sometimes you'll have this urge to want to change things or want to do different things. But in reality, all you got to do is look at the data and help you determine what direction do I need to go inside of my business. Is my cost to acquire a customer way too high? Well, great. Based on that data, I got to make decisions specifically around my marketing. Is my cash collected rate too low? Well, I got to go talk to my sales team to help them improve their cash collected rate. So metrics allow you to make better decisions, okay? Metrics, better decisions. Remember that. Now, how do you get your baseline? Number 1, pull your last 100 calls, okay? And here's the 5 things that you want to be able to calculate. How many of those leads got called? That's the easiest one, right? How long did it take for you to call them? What is your speed to lead from a call perspective? How many attempts were made before somebody gave up or somebody just said, hey, this lead is not worth it? What was the show up rate on the booked calls and how many became deals? That's really what you're looking for. And once you have a baseline of these metrics, you can then get percentages. You can use AI to calculate a lot of this. But then the last number that you're trying to determine is the lead to deal ratio. And so the other 4 or 5, whatever we have here, are going to tell you which leak is the worst and which one you need to focus on because the data will allow you to figure out which leak you should fix. And so then one thing I do want to add to that is that spend up to a quarter improving a problem because you need enough data for what we call statistical significance. When you have enough data, then you can take a look at the data and say, great, these are the changes that I made. This is the effect of those changes. Now what do we do with that? And you need enough data. You need enough data points to be able to make a decision effectively. So whatever change you make, give it a quarter. Give it through 90 days before assessing of whether it was good or not. Now, sometimes you'll be able to tell immediately and what you need to tweak, but gather enough data before making a big empirical decision, okay? Because changes need time to show up. So that's number 1, which is get your baseline. Super simple, probably take you about 10, 15 minutes. Use AI, it'll probably help you. Next is going into engineering your first touch. So when I made my first $100,000 cash collected in 8 weeks, it was very simple. I had a lead come in. It would, using Zapier, it would hit my cell phone and I would just call immediately. If they didn't pick up, I'd call double dial. And then if they didn't pick up, I would text. And then I would continue to text for 7 days and call twice every single day on hot window times, right? Hot window times was 8 a.m. in the morning, 8 to 9, and then I would call between 5 to 7. That was the highest pickup rate. If I was in a meeting, I had a buddy who was calling. Call and text a lead as soon as they come in. Now, if you have Go High Level, HubSpot, Service Titan, whatever you're running, this is already built in. Have it ring the prospect so you can create workflows where as soon as a lead comes in, it just calls right away. And if they pick up, it kind of three-way connects you really quickly, or it calls you while it's calling them. And if they pick up, you can pick up very easily, right? Or you can set it up with a team member or a salesperson or whatever it may be. And the next thing is when you're texting, make it seem like a human text message. What we found is in some certain CRMs, due to TCPA rules, you need to say stop. There was an offer that I saw for a men's dating coach where it says, reply stop to unrespond. The government made me say this. And it was just hilarious. A buddy of mine, the way that he hid that is that he did it in 3 messages. So the first message would have stop, and then he would send the other 2, right? As long as it has stop, you're going to be good to go. There's rules of you posting it on your website and opt-in form and stuff like that you can get away with, but you can get creative with that stop message. And then you want to call 2 to 3 times in the same day. So if a lead opted in at 4, call them right then and there, call them again at 5, right? And call them again at probably like 7. Somebody's going to pick up, right? The likelihood, and you're going to send a text message anyway. So they're going to pick up, or they're going to respond to a text message because they see because remember, calling, texting, and email are all just touch points. Say you call the person, they didn't pick up, but you sent the text message. They got the notification for the call, and then they got the text message. So maybe they're going to respond to the text message, right? Or you sent an email, and then you sent a LinkedIn message, and then you called. And so they may see that you called, and then they check their email. They're like, oh, you're the person that actually called. Right? And sometimes I even just end up sending text messages when I'm doing enterprise because it's just faster to communicate with people, right? And then 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Is what I find is the hot windows, right? So between Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m., because TCPA rules, depending on the time zone, be careful. Call 8 to 10 a.m., right? Usually 8 to 9 is really good right before people are getting ready for work or they're driving to work or whatnot, they have time. And then 5 to 7 p.m., usually they're available to pick up the time. Middle of the day, it's usually for speed to lead or doing follow-ups or stuff like that. Those are the times that I have found to have the highest pickup rate. Now, what you'll find is that Monday and Tuesday, people will pick up on average. It's okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but people will book on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the same week. If you call Thursday and Friday, people will want to book the next week after. So if you have availability on Saturday, that also really helps if you're calling Thursday and Friday. Missed call text back, super simple. Turn it on. Have a message go out so that way you can start responding. Have a calendar link on your thank you page. Have the ability to give people how to book rather than them just sitting around. If they're a hot lead, they can just book themselves in. So if it's like an in-person appointment that you do in their home to do kind of like a walkthrough or whatever, just have a calendar in there, right? And if you know that, let's say your tech or whatever takes about 2 hours for that appointment and 30 minutes of drive time, just block that off in there. That way people that are hot, they can book right away. The other piece of that is, like, if a human is dialing, like, make sure that like the phone buzzes on an opt-in and whoever's free can call. And you always want to double dial and text, okay? And install the rule. Every lead, this is like a mindset that you have to install inside of your business and in your team. Every lead gets touched inside 5 minutes, 24/7, right? Or the system is broken. Now, you're like, how do you do 24/7, Mo? Because my guy only works from 8 to 5. Well, that's where boring sales comes in. Boring sales can cover you from 5 all the way to 8 in the morning and book more appointments. And it'll outperform your seller team. Check us out, boringsales.ai. But I've called leads at 9 p.m. at night. So I call this the hot window. And our AI is allowed to do this where if somebody opts in at that time, it'll call immediately because that person is right then and there. Like we call within 60 seconds of the first person opting in. If they don't pick up, then after that, it falls within the normal TCPA calling window because they gave us permission to call at that time. So again, look at the laws and the rules and regulations, but we've looked at them significantly. So that's step number 2, which is engineering the first touch. Step number 3 is creating a repeatable process and system. Okay. What you want to do first and foremost, write the best version of the script, right? For like whatever sales process or called the best version of it, line by line, sentence by sentence. I remember when I sold weight loss, and even I do this right now, I have in my script, I color code specific words for tonality. So if I need an upward inflection, I will add red. If I need a downward inflection, I'll add like a blue. So what it does, it tells me that I need to emphasize on specific words, or I need to ask questions in a specific tonality. You don't have to get that detailed, but what you want is you want to have a precise process written down, so then you, your team, anybody can pick that up and replicate it over and over and over again. Okay. The second part of creating a repeatable process is going to be lead with context before you even say your name, right? So a couple examples of this is like people like to say, hey, is this Sarah? They're like, yeah, who is this? Hey, just you filled out the form about the kitchen remodeling, right? I don't like, hey, is this Sarah anymore? This is just me personally. Other salespeople might disagree with me on this, but I just like to just jump into it. Hey, Sarah, how you doing? People's natural response, I was like, oh, I'm good. Who is this? Oh, hey. Calling because you opted in for a form about kitchen remodeling. Ask the next question. I just continue to push the deal along. The third portion of this is focus on one goal for the call. And so what ends up happening is that people can confuse and they try to do a gazillion things. If the goal is to book an appointment, just focus on booking an appointment and qualifying the lead. If the goal is to make a sale, just focus on the sale. If you have like an intro offer, if you're like a med spa and you collect like a $97 deposit for somebody to come in, well, focus on that specifically. Write the script according to that, not around this. If your outcome is to get a deposit, write the script around getting the deposit. And this is what we do for our customers, where we'll look at the script and the process and train the AI to do that specifically. And then we do call reviews to make sure that it improves, because the more data it has, the better it gets. And you want to lead the conversations and ask the questions that you need to ask. Don't make it bloated. Like I remember in my last sales role, I had a team member who would only ask questions that would move the deal along. That was it. That's all he did. And it was very precise questions, and he didn't ask extra things that were not necessary, right? And then book the closest possible spot. Same day if you can. If the person called at 8 a.m. in the morning, see if you can get them in at like 4 p.m. later down the line, or the next day. If you get them in within the next 24 to 48 to 72 hours. Anything longer than that, if you book anything like 2, 3, 4 weeks out and there's no deposit, like the show up rates are going to be abysmal. Okay. Next, everyone who touches the lead runs the same script, right? Versus if it's call number 1 versus call 400, it's the same thing. And if someone says, hey, I can improvise and I don't like a script and I don't like a process, it's like, great. Prove it with data. If your closing percentage or your booking percentage or your qualification percentage is better than everybody else, then we'll use your process and turn that into what is repeatable. But until then, we have a proven system. That's why you have to create it with enough reps, right? We have a proven system that works, so you got to continue to follow it. Next thing, which is very hard to do, and most people don't want to do it. It's called avoidance. It's hard work. You have to QC the calls that are happening from your team. Like every single day, you should have a sales huddle. You should be reviewing calls. And like, the script only has value if people are running it 100%, so that way you can give feedback. And if you're going to build a sales organization and build a really good business, you're going to have to turn into a leader. And part of that is becoming a sales leader. And part of that is learning how to sell. That's just the reality, because sales and marketing is like 70% of a business, right? So that was number 3 of creating a repeatable process and system. Step number 4 is pre-built cadences. I like to have 3 pre-built cadences inside of the CRM before anything happens. And we have these pre-built into our platform and our software. So cadence number 1 is when a new lead comes in, right? And this is the exact structure that we've been running for almost 3 years, where days 1 through 7, there's a daily text message, a daily ringless voicemail, and it calls 2 to 3 times a day. So that can happen within days 1 through 7. If you feel like, hey, 3 calls a day spaced out is way too much, fine. Do 2, do 1, whatever you like. I know that on day 1 or on day 0, when the person opts in, if you can call twice, great. If you can't because it's nighttime, then the next day, just double up, right? They ask for, like I said, they asked for help 5 minutes ago. So act like you want to help them. Like it's urgency. Minimum of 6 attempts before anyone is allowed to put them into long-term follow-up, right? I like to double this. Minimum of 12 attempts. Because if you just double if it's a minimum requirement of 6 attempts at a 93% contact rate, if we just double it, it's going to increase our contact rate, right? Pretty simple math. And don't count SMS and emails as an attempt. Those were secondary. Calls are done as tertiary, primary. Now, attempts is a call during hot hours. What is a hot hour? As soon as the person opted in. So within 5 minutes of them opting in, ideally within 2 minutes of them opting in. The faster, the better. And then hot hours is between Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 and 5 to 7, right? And then a Saturday has like 10 to 2, but pickup rates on Saturdays and show up rates on Saturdays are pretty low depending on the industry. And remember, 93% of conversions happen at the 6th attempt. Okay. The second cadence that you want to have is a booked appointment. This is how you fix show up rate. Okay. So this is confirmation text messages. As soon as somebody books in, there's SMSs that are going out. So there's a 24-hour reminder. There's a 1-hour reminder. There's a 4-hour reminder. So you're just reminding them. And what you're really doing is reply. I don't really like the reply C to confirm. I just kept that in there for very simplification purposes. What I like to do is I like to get people to respond to the text messages. So it's like, hey, saw that you booked a call. Reviewing your application right now. Is there anything specifically that you wanted me to know before our call so I can go ahead and pass that off to our advisor? So what we're doing is asking questions. Hey, can you confirm for me so I can go ahead and lock in your spot? Hey, are you good to go here? So what we're really doing is we're making sure we're engaging the prospect, because the more the prospect is engaged, the more chances that they have of showing up. If you notice that people are just not responding, then you need to change the copy of your sequences, or you need to just start double booking and have a backup team member like an SDR take that call. All right, moving on to cadence number 3. This is long-term no response. So after 7 days, I usually like to send a text message or an email or a call every 21 to 30 days with a different offer each time, right? And this could be like when I had my gyms, it was $21 for 21 days, $14 for 14 days, $7 for 7 days. And sometimes it would just be, hey, we made this free training, or hey, we are having this barbecue, or hey, we have this mobility session going on, why don't you come on over, right? So there's these different offers to engage people in different capacities. And the goal of long-term follow-up is just a reply. A reply equals you call immediately. So my goal when I'm sending text messages is to get people to respond to me. That's it. That's my entire response. And that's why when, for my wife, because she's at Neptune, we send pictures of Winston, our dog, all the time. And we just ask questions and people respond. They'll engage. They're like, oh my God, such a cute dog. We call them right then and there, because that's the chance that we have to be able to book the appointment and get them across the finish line, to remind them. Remember, they had the interest, they just didn't have the attention. We use text messages, calling, and email as a way to capture attention again. And then every 2 to 3 months, I like to do a mass text message to the whole list, so it's never going cold and we're never out of sight, out of mind. Right. Step number 5, which is metrics and KPIs. So the metrics and KPIs that you want to be able to track, I'm reviewing them again with you. Number 1 is going to be the lead to deal ratio. Put it on a whiteboard, put it on a Post-it note, whatever you like. Review it every single day. Is this improving? Is this moving up incrementally? Right. We use something called a master tracking dashboard. I have that inside of our business. I'm happy to share it if that'll be helpful for you. Let me know in the comments. But we track literally everything from ads all the way to profit. And every single day, I'm able to keep a track of what is coming in and what is going on inside of the business, so I can make better decisions. Because the business owners that keep a very tight fist on their finances, meaning they have a tight grip and they understand the economics of their business and the numbers and the metrics of their business, are going to be the ones that will make faster decisions, because they know whether they're profitable or not. Right. The next is you can control inputs, not the outcome. You want to watch for these 4 inputs that you can control, because there's only some things that you can control and some things that you can't control. You can't control if somebody's going to respond or not. But what you can control is increases the likelihood of their chance of responding. So how you do that? First touch, right? Within 5 minutes. Attempts per lead, more than 6 times per lead, which I've been harping on the entire time. Show up rate, you can improve the show up rates, right? You want to be able to get it 70% or plus, depending on your industry and what you're offering, right? Re-engagement, how many touches are going out per month on a dead list? These are all things that are under your control. Them replying is not. Now, part of it is because if you can change the copy and make the copy better, people are going to respond. Then what you want to do is move the inputs and the deal ratio, right? Focus on improving. And if you do that, it's going to improve the deal ratio overall. And so if you focus on improving your inputs, then what's going to happen is the lead to deal ratio will improve, because it's a lagging indicator. These are all leading indicators. The first time to first touch is a leading indicator. You take this action to improve all the downstream numbers, right? And listen, there's no shame in missing your targets. That's not the issue at all. There's only shame in not knowing why. Misattribution is a cardinal sin. So make sure that you're tracking your numbers, and we'll catch you on the next one.